Trumpelstiltskin decided he's going to run for office again, run for the presidency, and he's already pandering to the minority groups as opposed to talking about America as a whole and explaining how he's going to make America better. No, he's talking about how he's going to give this group this and that group that, and he's not talking about Americans as a whole. Again, he's pandering to minorities as opposed to unifying America. He's practicing the same divisive politics that the Democrats practice, and he's doing it very well, and his idiotic base doesn't understand this, but I don't really think he'd win.
America great and glorious again. I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Now, I want people to watch this to see what a scammer he is, and I'm going to also play my favorite candidate, Tulsi Gabbard. I'm going to show you the things that she said in debates, because people don't understand. If Tulsi Gabbard runs as a Republican, I don't think Trumpelstiltskin has a snowball's chance in hell.
When there's love in the room, it's really easy, if you want to know that it really is. You ought to try it sometime. Together we will be taking on the most corrupt forces and entrenched interests imaginable. Our country is in a horrible state. We're in grave trouble. This is not a task for a politician or...
Do people not remember, I don't know, when he was leaving office and we had a lockdown? The whole country was locked down. Do people not remember that he did not respond to the pandemic? He just didn't really do much. And then when he did, it was too little, too late. Do people not remember that? Do people not remember the whole country suffering because of him? Do people not remember the BLM riots? Do people not remember every major city being set on fire while he was president? Do people not remember any of this?
For a conventional candidate, this is a task for a great movement that embodies the courage, confidence, and the spirit of the American people. This is a movement. This is not for any one individual. This is a job for tens of millions of proud people working together from all across the land and from all walks of life, young and old, black and white, Hispanic and Asian, many of whom we have brought together for the very, very first time. If you look at the numbers, if you look at what's happened with Hispanic...
So he's talking about how he diluted the Republican Party, okay, and turned the Republican Party into a big tent party like the Democrats, which has destroyed any representation for the people the Republican Party originally represented.
With African American, with Asian, and just look at what's happening. This is a party that has become much bigger, much stronger, much more powerful, can do much more.
It's become bigger, but it has not become stronger. I will guarantee that. And I don't even know if it's become bigger with numbers, but it's become more diverse. I don't think it's become stronger. Not at all.
More good for our country. This is a job for grandmothers and construction workers, firefighters, builders, teachers, doctors, and farmers who cannot stay quiet any longer. You can't stay quiet any longer. You're angry about what's happening to our country. Our country is being destroyed before your very eyes. It's a job for every aspiring...
Do people not remember when this guy was in office? Do people not remember the state of the country when this gentleman was in office? That's all I'm saying.
Young person and every hard-working parent, for every entrepreneur and underappreciated police officer who is ready to shout for safety in America. The police are being treated so badly. These are great.
Yeah, the police are being treated so badly. This is coming from the guy that passed an executive order against the police.
People that can straighten out the crime. They're the ones that know how to do it. We have to give them back their respect and their...
You need to give them back their power that you took from them.
Dignity. This will not be my campaign. This will be our campaign all together.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
Now, I want the Trump supporters to realize, if Trump goes against Tulsi Gabbard, he's not going against some freaking moron like Jeb Bush or Ted Cruz or one of these people that can never find the words that they need to find to come out properly, or even Rand Paul. I mean, the thing is with the Trump election, the 2016 election, I really wanted Rand Paul to win, but the guy was a sissy that couldn't stand up to Trump, and he flopped, okay? But you have to understand, they're not going against a sissy. He's not going against a sissy when he goes against Tulsi Gabbard. He's not going against somebody that gets easily flabbergasted and can't find the correct words to say. He's going against somebody that knows what to say and when to say it and how to say it properly and knows what the hell she's talking about. This is somebody that tried to usher in change when she took the office of Congress. This is somebody that has been delivering since her early 20s as somebody, actually since high school, but as a political person, since her early 20s, she's been delivering. Unlike most of these other people that basically just hang out in the office and don't really do much. So let's hear what Tulsi Gabbard has to say about the racialization of everything, how Trump's throwing out these different, she's not talking about Trump here, she's talking about the Democrats. But let's hear what she has to say, because Trump is doing the same thing.
I think that really is the critical thing here, is that when we have Democrats and Republicans in positions of leadership, of course there are going to be disagreements on different issues or how we approach solving the problems of the American people. But so long as the goal is the same, the goal being, hey, we want to do what is best for the American people and our...
Exactly. We want to do what's best for the American people, not this group or that group, the American people as a whole. Civil nationalism.
For the American people and our country, then we know that progress is possible. And that's where we absolutely need more than just sane leaders, because the problem is bigger than just insanity. The problem that we have now is leaders who are so willing to manipulate the American people to further their own selfish political interests, or money or power or whatever it is. And we see this very clearly in how everything in our country is being racialized, that this is an intentional strategy to tear us apart based on the color of our skin, because they think that there's some political gain to be had from it, and they don't care at all about the destruction that they leave in their wake.
So let's see. People think Trump is going to win. Well, I don't think he's going to win if he goes up against Tulsi Gabbard, and you're going to see why. This is everything Tulsi Gabbard said. This is why the Democrats did everything they could to keep her out of the debates. Is because she crushed Kamala Harris. She'll crush Kamala Harris again. She'll crush Joe Biden, and she'll crush Trump. Her ability to say things that make sense in a clear way is unmatched. I mean, I would say she's probably the best communicator I've ever seen in politics. Here we go.
Woman Gabbard, your thoughts on equal pay?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's recognize the situation we're in, that the American people deserve a president who will put your interests ahead of the rich and powerful. That's not what we have right now. I enlisted in the Army National Guard after the al-Qaeda terror attacks on 9/11, so I could go after those who had attacked us on that day. I still serve as a major.
Now think about that. Listen to what she did.
Enlisted in the Army National Guard after the al-Qaeda terror attacks on 9/11, so I could go after those who had...
Trump is a draft dodger. Trump didn't sign up to serve in the military. How do you think that's going to play with the veterans?
Attacked us on that day. I still serve as a major, served over 16 years, deployed twice to the Middle East, and in Congress served on the Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committees for over 6 years. I know the importance of our national security, as well as the terribly high cost of war. And for too long, our leaders have failed us, taking us from one regime change war to the next, leading us into a new Cold War and arms race, costing us trillions of our hard-earned taxpayer dollars and countless lives. This insanity must end. As president, I will take your hard-earned taxpayer dollars and instead invest those dollars into serving your needs, things like health care.
Consider that.
Instead, invest those dollars into serving your needs. Instead, invest those dollars into serving your needs. Instead, invest those dollars into serving your needs.
She ain't talking about a platinum plan for this group or that group. She's talking about helping every American with the following program.
Like healthcare, a green economy, good paying jobs, protecting our environment, and so much more.
Congresswoman Gabbard,
Yes.
weigh in here.
I think we're talking about this in the wrong way. You're talking about one bill over another bill. Really what we're talking about is our objective, making sure that every single sick American in this country is able to get the health care that they need. I believe...
Exactly. Think about what she's offering versus what, I don't know, Donald Trump offered. Remember what happened under Donald Trump with health care. Remember all of the dead people. Remember his response to the pandemic. Remember how poorly he responded to the pandemic. Now let's listen to what Ms. Gabbard has to say about health care.
Our objective, making sure that every single sick American in this country is able to get the health care that they need. I believe Medicare for all is the way to do that. I also think that employers will recognize how much money will be saved by supporting a Medicare for all program, a program that will reduce the administrative costs, reduce the bureaucratic costs, and make sure that everyone gets that quality health care that they need. I also think if you look at other countries in the world who have universal health care, every one of them has some form of a role of private insurance. I think that's what we've got to look at.
Exactly.
That they need. I also think if you look at other countries in the world who have universal health care, every one of them has some form of a role of private insurance. I think that's what we've got to look at, taking the best of these ideas, but making sure unequivocally that no sick American goes without getting the care that they need. Ideas, but making sure unequivocally that no sick American goes without getting the care that they need. Ideas, but making sure unequivocally that no sick American goes without getting the care that they need, regardless of how much or little money they have in their pocket.
Congresswoman, you've said you would sign back onto the 2015 deal. Would you insist though that it address Iran's support for Hezbollah?
Let's deal with the situation where we are, where this president and his chicken hawk cabinet have led us to the brink of war with Iran. I served in the war in Iraq at the height of the war in 2005, a war that took over 4,000 of my brothers and sisters in uniforms lives. The American people need to understand that this war with Iran would be far more devastating, far more costly than anything that we ever saw in Iraq. It would take many more lives. It would exacerbate the refugee crisis. And it wouldn't be just contained within Iran. This would turn into a regional war. This is why it's so important that every one of us, every single American, stand up and say, no war with Iran. We need to get back into the Iran nuclear agreement, and we need to negotiate how we can improve it. It was an imperfect deal. There are issues like their missile development that needs to be addressed. We can do both simultaneously to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon and preventing us from going to war.
Time is up. I have just a very quick follow-up. Well, what would your red line be for military action against Iran?
Look, obviously, if there was an attack against the our troops, then there would have to be a response. But my point is, and it's important for us to attack against the our troops, then there would have to be a response. But attack against the our troops, then there would have to be a response.
Because she believes in the sovereignty of America, not nation building.
But my point is, and it's important for us to recognize this, is Donald Trump and his cabinet, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, and others, are creating a situation that just a spark would light off a war with Iran, which is incredibly dangerous. That's why we need to de-escalate tensions. Trump needs to get back into the Iran nuclear deal and swallow his pride. Put the American people first.
Hey, one of the first things you did after launching your campaign was to issue an apology to the LGBTQ community about your past stances and statements on gay rights. After the Trump administration's role...
Now, what you'll notice here is she does not apologize in the way that people might be suspecting. What she apologizes for is hurting people's feelings. She is still, as you will see, very much in favor of heteronormative rights as well. You'll see what I mean in a second here.
Of civil rights protections for many in that community. Why should voters in that community, or voters that care about this issue in general, trust you now?
Well, let me say that there is no one in our government at any level who has the right to tell any American who they should be allowed to love or who they should be allowed to marry. My record in Congress for over 6 years shows my commitment to fighting for LGBTQ equality. I serve on the Equality Caucus and...
Now, keep in mind, equality does not mean special privileges, and she recognizes that. She recognizes that, you know, LGBTQ Americans have the same rights as everybody else. They don't need special rights.
Voted for passage of the Equality Act. Maybe many people in this country can relate to the fact that I grew up in a socially conservative home, held views when I was very young that I no longer hold today. I've served with LGBTQ service members, both in training and deployed downrange. I know that they would give their life for me, and I would give my life for them. It is this commitment that I'll carry through as president.
So her commitment to gay, lesbian, and trans Americans is as Americans, not as gay, lesbian, and trans Americans, meaning that she sees them as Americans. And that's what's important, not whether they're gay, lesbian, or trans.
Of the United States, recognizing that there are still people who are facing discrimination in the workplace, still people who are unable to find a home for their families. It is this kind of discrimination that we need to address.
To jump off what he said, he described engagement as the problem. Is that what you will tell the parents of those 2 soldiers who were just killed in Afghanistan? Well, we just have to be engaged. As a soldier, I will tell you that answer is unacceptable. We have to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. We are in a place in Afghanistan.
Now notice, she recognizes that we have to come back from Afghanistan, something that Barack Obama did not deliver, something that Donald Trump did not deliver, something both Barack Obama and Donald Trump said they would deliver. Now, Joe Biden did deliver it, but everybody wants to piss and moan about how Joe Biden delivered it. Well, the facts are the facts. You got to start somewhere, and you got to start somehow. Was it an imperfect withdrawal from Afghanistan? Of course. However, Tulsi Gabbard, who actually decided that she did want to bring the troops home from Afghanistan, who does have military experience, and who probably did have a better plan than the Trump-Biden plan to withdraw from Afghanistan, because that's really what it was. Biden carried over from the Trump plan to withdraw, but he actually delivered. Now, the difference is Tulsi Gabbard has more to stand on than Trump did, because Trump didn't deliver. Okay? Now, keep in mind, Biden did deliver, and then people want to piss and moan about the imperfection of the plan. Well, I don't think the plan would have been that imperfect under a President Tulsi Gabbard, but, you know, we'll never know because nobody voted for her.
Have to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. We are in a place in Afghanistan where we have lost so many lives. We've spent so much money that's coming out of every...
Now, keep in mind, what broke the back of the Soviet Union, people don't understand this. Everybody says communism doesn't work, supply-side economics doesn't work, blah, 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 blah. It wasn't economic issues that broke the back of the Soviet Union. It was the Soviet Union pouring money into their allies like Afghanistan, and in particular, Afghanistan is what broke the back of the Soviet Union. Tulsi Gabbard recognized that pouring our money and our energy and our lives into a country that is not America would most definitely result in the breaking of the back of the United States of America, just like it led to the breaking of the back of the USSR.
So much money that's coming out of every one of our pockets, money that should be going into communities here at home, meeting the pockets, money that should be going into communities here at home, pockets, money that should be going into communities here at home.
Exactly. What she is stating is all these people that are like, we don't have money for Medicare for all, but we have money for a war with Afghanistan that serves absolutely no purpose. How many times have we rebuilt Afghanistan? How many times have we rebuilt Haiti? How much money do we give Israel, who then sells millions of dollars of our military equipment that we give them to China?
meeting the needs of the people here at home. We are no better off in Afghanistan today than we were when this war began. This is why it's so important to have a president and commander-in-chief who knows the cost of war and who's ready to do the job on day one. I am ready to do that job when I walk into the Oval Office. Thank you very much.
I would just say I don't want to be engaged. I wish we were spending all this money in places that I've represented that have been completely forgotten and we were rebuilding. But the reality of it is, if the United States isn't engaged, the Taliban will grow and they will have bigger, bolder terrorist acts. We have got to have some present there.
The Taliban was there long before we came in. They'll be there long before we leave.
Well,
we cannot keep U.S. troops deployed to Afghanistan thinking that we're going to somehow squash this Taliban that has been there, that every other country that's tried
I didn't say squash them. When we weren't in there, they started flying planes into our buildings.
Now listen to her response. This is absolutely perfect because she knows what she's talking about. He does not. Just like she knows what she's talking about and Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. Trump will be babbling about super duper hydrosonic missiles while she's talking about how she enlisted in the Hawaiian National Guard to serve the United States. And what will Trump be doing? A blah blah hydrosonic super duper missile.
They started flying planes into our buildings. So I'm just saying right now,
the Taliban didn't attack us on 9/11. Al-Qaeda did.
Well, I understand.
Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11.
I understand.
That's why I and so many other people joined the military to go after Al-Qaeda, not the Taliban.
The Taliban was protecting those people who were plotting against us. All I'm saying is, if we want to go into elections and we want to say that we got to withdraw from the world, that's what President Trump is saying. We can't. I would love for us to.
Protecting Al-Qaeda right now in Saudi Arabia.
It's a simple question. What is the biggest threat to who is the geopolitical threat to the United States? Just give me a one-word answer.
The greatest threat that we face is the fact that we are at a greater risk of nuclear war today than ever before in history.
Exactly.
Our nation was founded on the principles of service above self. Was founded on the principles of service above self. Was founded on the principles of service above self. People who fled kings who literally prospered on the backs and the sacrifices of people. Coming here to this country, instead putting in place a government that is of, by, and for the people. Putting in place a government that is of, by, and for the people. Putting in place a government that is of, by, and for the people. But that's not what we have. Instead, we have a government that is of, by, and for the rich and powerful.
And let's hear a multi-billionaire like Trump that scammed and schlammed and did a whole bunch of dirty dealing during the pandemic to print a bunch of funny money and hand it to the super rich. Let's see how he'd deal with that in a debate with Ms. Gabbard.
That is of, by, and for the rich and powerful. Government that is of, by, and for the rich and powerful. Government that is of, by, and for the rich and powerful. This must end. As President, our White House will be a beacon of light, providing hope and opportunity, ushering in a new century where every single person will be able to get the health care they need, where we will have the health care they need, where we will have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink, where we will have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink, where we will have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink.
Now remember, Donald Trump ran on cleaning up the water in Flint, Michigan. Last I checked, the water in Flint, Michigan was still undrinkable. Okay? Tulsi Gabbard is the only candidate that I'm aware of that has run on a clean water idea. Okay? Now, what's funny about that is if you go from Pennsylvania to the Southwest, like I did, if you drive out there, you will find out very quickly that a large majority of the smaller towns in this country do not have clean, drinkable water coming out of the faucets. Okay? And this has to do with archaic water systems. Okay? And mining and things like that. There is no excuse for the United States to not have clean, drinkable water in every city, every town, every community in the United States. Tulsi Gabbard recognizes that, and she is literally the only candidate I'm aware of that actually does recognize that.
Where we will have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink, where we will have good paying jobs in a new green economy. Join me in ushering in this new century with peace, prosperity, opportunity, and justice for with peace, prosperity, opportunity, and justice for all. With peace, prosperity, opportunity, and justice for all.
So people might wonder, why are police having such a tough time enforcing the laws? Well, it goes back to Trump. Trump hailing law enforcement signs executive order calling for police reform. President Trump signed an executive order on Tuesday encouraging police departments to improve training, a step critics say falls short of what is needed, blah, blah, blah. The order comes from President faces tremendous pressure to take action following the killing of George Floyd at the hands of police last month in the Rose Garden, which blah, 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 blah. Questions over limits of power. The order also calls for police departments to ban the use of chokeholds, except when an officer feels his or her life is endangered. So, as a martial artist, and somebody that has taught police how to arrest people, I can tell you the use of a chokehold is sometimes necessary to help somebody become more compliant. If you are trying, now, I guarantee you Donald Trump has never arrested anybody. Now, you need compliance from the person in order to get them to become safely arrestable. Okay, it wasn't immediately clear what practical effect that might have, given questions about Trump's powers over what is mostly state and local authority. Keep in mind, he doesn't have powers over state and local authority. I don't understand how this even works, being that the state and local governments are given the power to enforce their laws according to the Constitution. It's a violation of constitutional rights. Republican Representative Jim Jordan called the order a tremendous step forward in improving blah, 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 blah. It's not. It's not a step forward. It's a step backward, especially combined with the First Step Act. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's move on here. Okay, so this is the law right here. Okay, this is the law right here. And what I want to show you here, right here, state or local law enforcement agencies' use of force policies prohibit the use of chokeholds, a physical maneuver that restricts an individual's ability to breathe for the purposes of incapacitation, except for in situations where the use of deadly force is allowed by law. Well, what's important to understand is an arrest can go very quickly from where there isn't deadly force allowed by law to where there is, depending on the locality. Okay, not to mention the use of, the person might become violent enough that you need to use deadly force. The self-defense of the officer and of the surrounding civilians and everyone else becomes a situation. Mental health, homelessness, and addiction. Okay, since the mid-20th century, America has witnessed a reduction in targeted mental health treatment. Ineffective policies have left more individuals with mental health needs on our nation's streets, which has expanded the responsibilities of law enforcement officers. As a society, we must take steps forward to safely and humanely care for those who suffer from mental illness and substance abuse in a manner that addresses such individuals' needs and needs of their communities. It is the policy of the United States to promote the use of appropriate social services as the primary source for individuals who suffer from impaired mental health. Okay, now I've worked in mental health, and I've worked as a security guard. I've worked as a security guard. I've worked in a lot of different security positions. Now, I can tell you right now, using social services to respond to an irate mentally ill person is not going to help that mentally ill person, and is not going to help the social service person that they're going to open a can of whoop ass on. I can guarantee you of that. Okay, I've worked in mental health. I've received mental health services. I've worked as a security guard. I've arrested people. I know for a fact that there are situations where, the mentally ill person becomes a danger to themselves and others, and you need law enforcement to do something. And that's what this crazy law that Donald Trump signed, this executive order, that's what it does not take into consideration. It's not taking into consideration the reality of the situation. Now, I want to keep in mind here, Tulsi Gabbard wanted to do what? She wanted to help all Americans. Not some Americans, not African Americans, not Chinese Americans, not Asian Americans, not Samoan Americans. She's half Samoan. No, she wasn't saying we're only going to help Samoan Americans, or we're only going to help Pacific Islander Americans, or we're only going to help Black Americans, or only going to help white Americans, or only going to help Hispanic Americans, or only going to help gay Americans, or lesbian Americans, etc. She wanted to help all Americans with her policies. Now, let's hear Trump say who he believes built America once more, because I want to compare the two. And this is who, if he goes up against Tulsi Gabbard, he has to go up against a true patriotic American that joined the military to defend America from the terrorist threat of Al-Qaeda. He's a draft dodger, and whereas Tulsi Gabbard wants to help all Americans, that's not exactly what Donald Trump believes. Donald Trump believes very specific things.
African Americans built this nation. 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 African Americans built this nation.
So this is Trump talking about his Platinum Plan, which is a plan that targets only black communities with special grants and special money to help them excel. Now, mind you, this was at the height of the pandemic that he had a lackluster response to, which resulted in the deaths and hardship of many, many, many millions of Americans, and we still haven't fully come back from that, in my opinion. And that's a problem, okay? So he's only reaching out to black Americans with this gift of taxpayers' money. Now remember, Tulsi Gabbard wasn't reaching out to black Americans. She was reaching out to Americans. Americans, not black Americans, Americans. Now let's hear what Trump has to say here.
Like Joe Biden, have taken black voters for granted. They made you big promises before every election, and then the moment they got to Washington, they abandoned you and they sold you out. The Democrat Party used you and they lied to you every single time. You know it better than anybody else knows it. The Democrats will always take back the vote. And I'm here today to announce a brand new plan to deliver more opportunity, more.
Now what's funny about this is, like I told him on Twitter, it doesn't matter what he does. He's not going to win the majority of the black votes, and even if he does win the majority of the black votes, it will not be enough votes to make up for the votes of the white working poor that he alienated. The white working poor that elected him to office. The white working poor that he backstabbed. Okay, so keep that in mind. I warned him about that on Twitter. He didn't want to listen to me. He wanted to reach out to the Zionist and the black vote, and as a result, he lost. But, he's going to announce a brand new plan. Let's hear what his plan is.
The vote. And I'm here today to announce a brand new plan to deliver more opportunity, more security, more fairness, and more prosperity to black communities.
Now keep this in mind. They get mad when Joe Biden talks about equity and equality and all this stuff, right? Now what's this? This is just equity, quote unquote equity, but only applied to black people.
Opportunity, more security, more fairness, and more prosperity. Opportunity, more security, more fairness, and more prosperity to black communities. To black communities. To black communities. We call it the Platinum Plan. We call it the Platinum Plan. We call it the Platinum Plan. Platinum Plan. And that's a contract with black Americans, and that.
Now keep in mind, that's a contract with black Americans and only black Americans, not Americans, not all Americans. This isn't a contract to increase the prosperity of all of America. This is only a contract to increase the prosperity of black Americans, not all Americans.
And that's a contract with black Americans, and that's a contract with black Americans, and that's a contract with black Americans.
So people get mad when I try to compare Donald Trump's platinum plan to Deng Xiaoping's version of special economic zones, where he introduced small-scale capitalism and, you know, in certain areas. So let's look at now, what's funny is Trump's platinum plan was clearly less well thought out than Deng Xiaoping's plan, and clearly probably wouldn't have worked anyway. And it probably won't work. You know, if it's ever implemented, it won't work. But Deng Xiaoping's plan did work. However, it's also resulted in a very bad, very polluted China that is not very good for the average Chinese citizen with the air quality, water quality, etc. But so there were special tax incentives for foreign investment, greater independence from the central government on international trade activities. Economic characteristics are represented as 4 principles. 1, construction primary relies on attracting and utilizing foreign capital. In this case, it's attracting and utilizing black capital. Well, it's using, basically what Trump's doing is he's using other Americans' money, the taxpayers' money, to prop up black people and only black people. Whereas the special economic zones work to prop up the Chinese people as a whole. So this is better than Trump's plan. 2, primary economic forms are Sino-foreign joint ventures, meaning Chinese and foreign joint ventures and partnerships, as well as wholly foreign-owned enterprises. 3, products are primarily export-oriented. 4, economic activities are primarily driven by market forces. So this was set up to encourage foreign investment in Chinese productivity. This is what turned China into the workhouse of the world and resulted, unfortunately, in the pollution that China faces. Special economic zones are listed separately in the national planning, including financial planning, and have province-level authority on economic administration, meaning the province or state, as we would call it in this country, but it's a province in China, has the authority over it. Now, these worked. Now, the main difference between a special economic zone is they're taking somebody else's money, such as rich people from America and Europe, and they're using that money to build up the Chinese workforce and give foreign money, not Chinese money, to the Chinese worker, building up the prosperity of the Chinese worker. Whereas Trump's platinum plan would have simply taken Trump's plan is a redistribution of American wealth, simply taking American wealth from the white working poor and other taxpayers, even, of course, blacks that pay taxes, etc., taking that money and utilizing that money to infuse that money into the black communities. Okay, so really what Trump is doing is more similar to Marxism than it even is Deng Xiaoping's plan of economic policies and special economic zones, which was the use of foreign money and the infusion of foreign capital into the Chinese markets and into the Chinese person's pocket. So I'm going to move on here now. Now, this is a Trump ad targeting black Americans and only black Americans. Now, I want his voters that watch my channel to be aware of this. He does not have your interests in mind, and he does not have the interests of the greater American Republic in mind. His interests are basically pandering to one group of people and one group of people only. And it's reckless, and it's not good for the Republic as a whole.
This president president deserves the support of the black community because he's earned it.
There is a silent majority of us that see you, see what you're doing, see what you did for HBCU schools. That was actually the deal for us.
I wager to say that there is no American president since Lincoln that has had the impact for black America that President Trump has had.
Joe Biden supported the crime bill in 94.
He has imprisoned black.
Now, what's humorous about that? Joe Biden's crime bill that put criminals in the black communities behind bars allowed for prosperity and allowed for all-time lows in crime in the black communities throughout the republic, which helped them to prosper. That's what helped them to prosper. Okay, so if anything, Joe Biden and Bill Clinton have done more for the black communities than any other president. Or, I guess Joe Biden could be considered a president now, but at the time he was a senator. My point is, the president that has done the most for the black communities was President Bill Clinton, who cracked down on black crime, predominantly black crime, but crime in general. And what that did is that allowed the urban communities to prosper. And his lending policies that made banks lend to black communities and things like that, but all poor people too, it allowed for more prosperity of the black communities as well as the prosperity of all Americans. Okay, so let's move on.
America, basically.
Trump supported the NAACP and black youth like myself in 87.
Basically.
Trump supported the NAACP and black youth like myself in 87.
Basically.
Trump supported the NAACP and black youth like myself in 87.
He's a businessman. He's bringing businesses back into America.
Bringing jobs back to America. Bringing the truth back, and he's stopping needless wars.
My day is going to be, amazing.
How is he stopping needless wars? It's Joe Biden that brought our troops back from Afghanistan, not Trump. Joe Biden ended the war in Afghanistan, not Trump. It's Joe Biden who's not sending soldiers over to Ukraine. Trump probably would have already done that. Can you imagine Trump reacting to that missile that probably wasn't a Russian? It wasn't a Russian missile, but could you imagine Trump reacting to that? Do you remember Trump going back and forth with Kim Jong-un over the button issue because he's crazy? It's Joe Biden that brought our troops back from Afghanistan one more time, not Trump. Trump promised, just like Obama promised. He didn't deliver. It was Biden that delivered, not Trump.
I'm never going to forget this day. This day is historic.
In 2016, I made you a solemn pledge. I would be your greatest champion. In the first 3 years, we achieved the lowest black unemployment rate in history. Lowest black unemployment rate in history. Lowest black unemployment rate in history. Lowest black unemployment rate.
What's his obsession with the black unemployment rate? Why is he not concerned about all Americans, especially at this time? This is at the time where the pandemic was peaking and people were dropping dead like flies in this country.
We achieved the largest job gains for African Americans on achieved the largest job gains for African Americans. Achieved the largest job gains for African Americans on record. The poverty rate for African Americans reached the lowest level ever recorded. I did more for the black community. Did more for the black community. Did more for the black community. Did more for the black community in 47 months than Joe Biden did in 47 years.
Now, keep in mind that Joe Biden's crime bill was a monster of an improvement for the black and other urban people in this country, not to mention all Americans in general, because it led to all-time lows in gun crime and all-time lows in crime, which helped the country prosper more.
We cannot deny that man has done everything that he has set out to do in record-breaking time. Can we say 3 years? Can we say 3 years?
We will create 3 million.
Okay, he didn't even accomplish the Muslim ban from countries that were already in the works to be banned under Obama. He extended the stay of Haitian migrants in the United States, whereas Joe Biden sent hundreds of thousands of them back to Haiti, which is what you're supposed to do.
New jobs for the black community. 3 million new jobs for the black community. 3 million new jobs
Now notice he's saying we will create. Not that we have created, we will create.
3 years.
We will create 3 million
This is
new
from that
jobs
Platinum
for the black
Plan.
community. Open 500,000 new black-owned businesses. Bring even greater fairness to the justice system.
Now keep this in mind when he's talking about equity and this and how we have to stand up for police. Listen to this crap.
Bring even greater fairness to the justice system. We did criminal justice reform.
I want to thank President Donald John Trump.
Remember the cocaine trafficker that he let out of prison because after all she didn't kill anybody unless somebody died of the cocaine they ingested.
Ladder of opportunity for African American children by delivering school choice to every parent in America.
Now, what is school choice? School choice is the government saying we are not going to help these communities build themselves up to their most prosperous and most educated level. What we're going to do is we're going to take troubled students and put them into schools that are achieving good grades, that are achieving good things, not because, this is the thing, it's like blaming teachers for students getting bad grades. At a certain point, you have to blame the student, okay? So the quality of education does also fall on the student. Now, what you have to keep in mind here is you have Donald Trump stating these things. Well, you know, I'm sorry to say, but this is not going to raise up the level of education for these troubled students. It's going to bring down the level of education for the non-troubled students.
Delivering school choice to every parent in America. Together we made unbelievable progress and achieved once unimaginable success. And with your support, your vote, and your voice, the best is yet to come.
It blows my mind that Donald Trump and people like Dr. Oz are supported by the National Rifle Association. Okay, that has always blown my mind. Trump is by far the most anti-gun candidate we have ever, not even anti-gun candidate, anti-gun president we have ever had in the history of this country. Now listen to him, listen to what he says to Republican Senator Patrick Toomey. This is a guy that's supported by the NRA that tried to ban guns.
Doesn't make sense then. I have to wait till I'm 20.
By that I mean Donald Trump tried to ban guns, not Pat Toomey. Listen to what he says to Pat Toomey here.
Doesn't make sense then. I have to wait till I'm 21 to get a handgun, but I can get this weapon at 18. I don't know. So I was just curious as to what you did in your bill.
We didn't address it, Mr. President. Look, I think
you know why? Because you're afraid of the NRA, right? Chris, did you have something?
No. I think you underestimate the power of the gun lobby.
No. I'll tell you what. And they do have great power. I agree with that. They have great power over you people. They have less power over me. What do I need? But I tell you, they are well-meaning. And I said to them, very nice. I said, fellas, we got to do something. We can't keep restricting, and we have to do what's right. When it comes to mental health and other issues, I said, we have to do what's right. I like taking the guns early, like in this crazy man's case that just took place in Florida. Taking the guns early, like in this crazy, what's right. I like taking the guns early, like in this crazy man's case that just took place in Florida.
Does that sound like a pro-gun president taking guns without due process?
He had a lot of firearms. They saw everything. To go to court would have taken a long time. So you could do exactly what you're saying, but take the guns first, go through due process.
Take the guns first, go through due process second, meaning you're assumed guilty before you're proven guilty in the court of law. Does that make any sense? Does that sound like a pro-gun statement?
Second.
One of the most detestable things, I've been a follower of David Duke in the sense that I've followed him and what he said and what he's done. I don't necessarily agree with him on all points, but the thing is, I have read what he said, and he gets a lot badder rap than anything that he's actually said. People take what he says out of context all the time, but when he was running as a Republican Senate candidate for the U.S. Senate to represent Louisiana, Eric Trump threatened to shoot him in the head. Okay? Now, Eric Trump is, of course, the son of Donald Trump, who wanted to take other people's guns while he has two sons that have access to firearms, two sons that are I would say probably potentially very dangerous, a lot more dangerous than David Duke is, and that threatened a Republican senatorial candidate.
One more political note, former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke says he plans to run for U.S. Senate in Louisiana. Duke made the announcement on his website. A registered Republican, Duke would be seeking an open Senate seat. Duke's announcement comes as Louisiana is grappling with deep racial tensions after the shooting death of a black man by white police officers and the deadly ambush involving Baton Rouge officers.
Now, let's keep in mind the only thing that Dr. David Duke did to deserve this maniac threatening him was he endorsed his father for the presidency.
Eric wants voters to know he finds Trump supporter and former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard David Duke disgusting. Apparently so much so that he agreed with a talk radio host who said Duke deserves...
Now, David Duke's not the one that always has drool all over his face like Eric Trump. If you look, for whatever reason, Eric Trump always has drool all over his lips and mouth. It's very disgusting. If anybody's disgusting, it's Eric Trump, not David Duke.
Deserves a bullet in the head.
If I said exactly what you said, I'd get killed for it. But I think I'll say it anyway. The guy does deserve a bullet. I mean, I think I'll say it anyway. The guy does deserve a bullet. I mean, I think I'll say it anyway. The guy does deserve a bullet. I mean, these aren't good people. These are horrible people.
Eric Trump was on Denver's Talk Radio 630 KHOW Thursday when the host asked him about political opponents and the media apparently tying Donald Trump and his campaign to white nationalists.
You know, this is the MO of the DNC. You know, they said this at the very beginning. This is how we're going to discredit Donald Trump by, going after him and saying that he's...
Number one, David Duke is not a white nationalist, okay? That's number one, okay? He was a white separatist. Number two, Dr. Duke did not support Donald Trump because of his, because he thought Donald Trump was a white nationalist. He supported Donald Trump because he thought Donald Trump was an American nationalist that would do good things for the American people. David Duke is ultimately a conservative American. Now let's move on.
Texas, and I mean, these are our politicians, and that's why I think I said before, I'm disgusted. I mean, I'm disgusted by... it's just this process.
Duke is currently running for the U.S. Senate in Louisiana. He has continued...
You have to have some big balls to threaten a Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate in Louisiana, which, of course, Eric Trump either has very big balls or a very small brain. My guess is it's the second one, a very small brain.
Expressed support for Donald Trump, even releasing a robocall in August. The Trump campaign denounced the call, Duke, and any group or individual associated with a message of hate. For Newsy,
So now you heard Donald Trump talk about taking the guns early and blah, 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 blah. Now this is David Duke responding to George Zimmerman, a man that was found innocent in a court of law, getting death threats, okay? And I'm going to go on, and people are going to say, George Zimmerman was a racist, all this. There was never any proof to prove that George Zimmerman was racist. But let's hear what David Duke has to say here.
Posting a picture of anybody that's dead that he shot. That's not good for the family. It's not good for anybody. But I do understand how the man's getting kind of frustrated. He's been shot at. They've tried to kill him. He's been found innocent in a court of law. And I certainly, the whole thing to me is nothing more what's going on right now in this country. What went on with the Trayvon Martin case is a perfect example of the racism and the mass media against European Americans. The only reason this was a huge case in the United States of America because it was a person called a white man who shot a black man.
Now let's take note here. Mr. Zimmerman is not a white man. He is Jewish and Hispanic.
A person called a white man who shot a black man.
For Mr. Duke to say European Americans are constantly...
24 facts about Jared Kushner. His White House transition was reportedly difficult. He had no prior experience in government or politics. He was born into wealth. He is an Orthodox Jew. He professes that Donald Trump is not an anti-Semite or a racist. Okay? So he does profess that Donald Trump is not an anti-Semite or a racist. He had to shoulder his family business from a young age. He remains incredibly close with his father. Mind you, his father was found guilty of bribing Democratic politicians. He has many tangled social and political connections. He played a considerable role in the Trump campaign, but his influence has since dwindled. He seems to have an appetite for revenge. He has shown unvarnished disdain for the press. He is intensely private. He is genteel. He and Ivanka like to talk business. He expresses pride in his growing family. His family was negotiating a $400 million real estate deal with a Chinese firm. His family was negotiating a $400 million real estate deal with a Chinese firm. He runs the White House Office of American Innovation. That's at that time. He reportedly failed to disclose $1 billion in loans and his position as part owner of the startup cadre. He attended a meeting with a Russian lawyer with ties to the Kremlin during the campaign. He denies any collusion. He was questioned by the FBI Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team about Russia's meddling in the 2016 election. He reportedly used a private email account to conduct White House business. He had his security clearance downgraded. That had to do with his ties to Israel. Trump's son-in-law's ties to Israel raised questions of bias. Kushner's family real estate company has long-standing and ongoing deals with major Israeli financial institutions. These relationships, also with a personal friendship with Benjamin Netanyahu and past links to the West Bank settler movement, could emerge as potential stumbling blocks by the creating of an appearance of bias. I don't think there's an appearance of bias that isn't there. People can read this on their own. The link is in the description. 89 of our 100 senators have dual citizenship. 89 of the senators and the Congress people have dual citizenship. Okay? So this is the U.S. Senate. You can take a wild guess of where their dual citizenship is. And, yeah. That's what you need to know. So, yeah. That's all for this video. I don't think Trumpelstiltskin is going to make it in a debate with Tulsi Gabbard. I just don't see it happening.